Everyone, please welcome Kerryn Fewster.
I am going to talk a bit about what embracing ambiguity actually means and why we think it's relevant as a topic for yourselves, regardless of what your role is, what size business you work with, which industry you're in. And I would actually guess that over the last 4 or so weeks, regardless of where you are, that at some stage you've dealt with some uncertainty, complexity, or workplace change. If you haven't, John's, the bar's still open, they can go to the back, you know. But my guess is that everyone is actually dealing with in some capacity, and certainly with the businesses we work with, that is one of the major pain points. How do we actually respond to this constant churn? So there's a whole lot of reasons as to why this is happening, and one of them is that in only a couple of years, 50% of the workforce will be freelancing in some capacity. I imagine quite a few of the people in the room here are already doing that. It doesn't mean that we give up our typical day job, but we might also be Ubering or Airbnb-ing or dog grooming or whatever else it might be to actually create our own sense of revenue, our own flexible workplace, and so we need to be ready for that. Most certainly, a lot of the leaders we work with at the moment are nowhere near ready for the fact they need to be much more flexible and trusting with regards to their workforce. A mere 10 years after that, 40% of the roles that we currently have today will either disappear or be significantly impacted due to automation and AI, artificial intelligence, for those who didn't know. So with that, what I'm suggesting to you is that if we have a look in the room and there's 40 of us in here, you know, does that mean that 40% of us are going to become irrelevant in terms of what our job is? And if so, what do we do to prepare for it? And that's why we are looking at this topic of embracing ambiguity. Coupled with all of that, less than 24% of our workplaces at the moment say that we've got engaged employees. That's 1/4 of the workforce. So what our understanding of engagement is in this sort of instance is I know I'm contributing, I make a difference, I'm being heard, my leader actually thinks I'm doing something valuable. If only 25% of us feel that way, and then we throw additional change at them, we're in all sorts. Coupled with that, the type of skills that are required moving forward are changing. So whilst we still need to have to communicate and engage with people, and you know, obviously the technical skills are a given, but we're looking at things like complex problem solving. So that's all about ideas generation, and there's a great venue for that because this place is full of the word ideas and it stimulates you to think differently. But which workforces are doing that well and which ones are not? This report that came out, which is actually the future of the workplace, had the 3 top priority workforce skills. The next one is critical thinking. And so that's all that area of conceptualise, then analyse, then synthesise. You know, so many, and I'm looking at age brackets, and I'm thinking I'm comfortable to say that there's a variety of ways that we race to the end game. What we're saying is the workplace is changing to such a point that we need to make sure that we're taking in all the ideas first. And the third one is actually about creativity, making sure that we're actually building a creative place where people can work. Now that doesn't mean going back to what we knew in primary school with finger painting and playing with clay. It may do, but in general what we say is creativity is about how we actually foster different ways of thinking in the workplace. Regardless of all of that, the data that we've had here for a while is 70% of change projects fail. That stat is not new. That has been around for 10 years. And the fact of the matter is we're not improving. We're not getting any better at impacting people positively with regards to change. We are still failing in that space. And the world is actually going much faster than what it was 10 years ago. So that for us has actually created some questions in our mind about how on earth are we going to remain relevant? How do we make sure that we're making some good decisions and actually getting some runs on the board and our projects are actually not failing? So we started to ask the question, why is change actually not sticking? And we really did start to ask ourselves, we've asked our clients, we've asked our peers, our network, and generally speaking, we believe we know what the answer is to that, which I'll talk to you about a little bit after this. But firstly, I just want to set a little bit of the scene about why I think it's okay that I'm standing up here and talking to you, besides the fact I was invited to do so. But we have a bit of history where we've had to implement change ourselves. So we're 12 years old next month, and we started with 4 directors, had a couple of great years. We had national clients, we're feeling brave, signed a 3-year lease. then the GFC, which we've mentioned earlier. So our business really plummeted as a result of that. And by 2010, so only 5 years later, our business that had grown to probably a dozen people was down to 2. And we were really starting to question our relevance as a business. My other director, she was overseas 6 out of the 12 months a year, working basically as a contracting body into an organisation. So we were unable to chat, throw around ideas, build the business. There was a lot of things we were unable to do. Then comes the next one, which is actually the mining boom started to crash. So while we had quite a lot of clients in the mining boom, in the mining sector, that we were working with directly, not only did we have that, we also had the rest of all the little businesses around them who were building themselves on the mining sector. So we got hit quite a few times in that particular year, 2012. That's me upside down. That's 2014, so it looks a bit sad really. There were some happy times in there, but what actually happened then is my business partner said, you know what, I don't want to be on this wave anymore. I've had enough and I'm out of here. I said, great, cheers. So then what I started to think about was, what am I going to do? Here I was the Change2020 Pty Ltd, but really it's just me, and how on earth was I going to affect change and do anything that was relevant? And what I did is I actually went to my network and got a whole lot of clever people around me, and I asked them lots and lots of questions. And I think that so what's that, 14? So I had some knowledge. So I asked myself, what do I need to do differently? How can I add value? We reset the vision, the mission, the values. We started to look at the different elements of our business model, and in particular 2 areas we launched. One was our mergers and acquisition part of the business, whereas effectively we work with businesses who are acquiring the other business and make sure that other business is ready for that acquisition. They're change ready, and we can actually implement the change and they can get their return on investment. And probably the one I really want to focus on is we launched our Embrace Ambiguity research work. So for us, we look at their 2017's onwards and upwards. And yes, I'm an optimist, but I actually also believe that that's sort of where we're going to go, because it's a really curious topic. And I really see so many great leaders that are struggling to keep up with the change, who are falling by the wayside by no fault of their own, other than the fact it's just exhausting. So we absolutely know that all organisations are changing, but not all organisations are keeping up with it. And some of the old brands, you might recall these ones that you've seen, they've come and gone. And there's a whole lot more out there as well. And the fact is that they had a really they had a strong business model, but the world changed really quite rapidly around them. I mean, you know, no one goes, my kids don't even know what a video store is or was, sadly. And they're like 15, you know, they didn't experience that. So that sort of change has been so significant in the last sort of half a dozen or so years. So we got really curious about that, and what we decided to do is ask some questions about what does embracing ambiguity mean. We actually went and interviewed some of our clients and friends and family about what does it mean. But with our curiosity being really piqued, what we did is we started a partnership up with QUT Business School, and that's been a fabulous partnership. What it's actually enabled us to do is they've conducted research for us around building a tolerance of ambiguity. And they've actually built an assessment tool for us. And I should say thank you to the people who completed the snapshot version that we sent out. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough responses at that particular time because we were a little late. We were embracing that unknown, but apparently you didn't all embrace it with us. So we don't have enough data, but what I can give you is some of the summary data from our benchmark group. So we've already ran this assessment survey with close to 350 people, and we've got some key findings for you. If you are interested in doing the overall survey, we can certainly arrange that for you. So some of the key takeaways from our early findings. Gen X have a significantly higher tolerance of ambiguity than younger generations. So there'll be some people nodding their heads and there'll be some other people saying, you've got to be kidding me. That is just not the case. And the reason why we believe that is the case is predominantly based around problem solving and ability to resolve complex situations. The second one is there's no notable difference between males and females with regards to tolerance of ambiguity, which means we can all respond in a similar way, good or bad, to the unknown, to uncertainty, to complexities. Anyone surprised by that? You're all I was surprised by that. The next one, the more educated, the higher tolerance of ambiguity. So this is not just the traditional tertiary university education. This is anyone who's actually equipping themselves with more skills, more capability, doing their Cert 3s, Cert 4s. Those who have actually got to focus on learning have a higher tolerance of ambiguity. And the last significant one I want to talk to you about at the moment is there's a significant correlation between creativity in the workplace and tolerance of ambiguity. So our position is that to succeed in new, uncertain and complex areas, we just absolutely have to encourage people to think differently. They have to look at things through a different lens, take in data in a different way. And what I want to speak a bit about is the need to build creative workplaces. So this place we're in suits this topic perfectly. You know, it looks like it's been built for today. Thank you, John. You know, the colours, the lighting, the fabulous lawn, all those type of things are actually fostering a non-standard way of thinking. We're encouraging people to do things a little bit differently. And we've had the opportunity to work with some great businesses who are doing that. But more often than not, it's something that's spoken about rather than exercised. So some of the things that we believe you can do to build a creative workforce, and it is to promote curiosity, encourage those open questions, build an environment where it's okay to test and challenge, where I don't have all the answers just because I'm the leader, where everyone can ask different questions. Think about what you even do with your kids, about why you go back and build curiosity. That's what we're talking about. Speaking of kids, encourage your team to embrace their inner child. And by that, I don't mean to, you know, go and eat 1,000 lollies, maybe. What I actually am suggesting in that instance is, remember as a kid, you'd go out, you'd explore. You'd actually try things you didn't know because you didn't worry about the consequence. What happens as we get older, we learn and we get sort of structured in terms of how we take in information and what we do. What we're suggesting here is actually find some time where having no rules is actually okay. Celebrate ideas. Celebrating ideas is not just about saying, yay, great job. It's actually you celebrating the concept of building ideas so that I know, regardless of how long I've been with the business, where I am in the business in terms of my position, I'm going to actually be okay to come up with an idea. So having a culture where ideas are genuinely celebrated really will lead to creativity in the workplace. Carve out free time, and that's such a tricky thing to do. You know, where everyone talks about being busy, everyone is compressed with that diary and those meeting requests and the emails, and then there's life and there's all those things. But there is so much evidence to say that if we can get some clear thinking space, and I'm not talking days, I'm talking moments, that we can actually come up with different ideas, we get clarity. So finding a way that you can carve out time. Wearing the hat of another. This is around the empathy piece. It's what I was sort of speaking about earlier, that if you can actually take on the lens of somebody else. So I know how this change will affect me. I know how I feel about this particular event or scenario. But what we want to do is encourage people to look at how will you feel about it and how are you and what happens in your role in that situation. Because again, that comes up with a more creative outcome as opposed to, I've always done it this way and it worked in the past, so I'm going to keep doing it. Let's look at it through other people's viewpoints. Design the boundaries, a bit tricky to see that one. What that one means is it sort of feels a bit counterintuitive. So what I am saying is actually put some boundaries around some ideas. The reason being is people can do amazing things. If you say to them, you have got 4 weeks, you've got X in your budget, you've got access to these 3 people, and this is the outcome that we're hoping we get to, off you go. As opposed to saying, go away, think about it, come back, and we'll talk about it again. If you compress the boundaries, people can do amazing things. Collaborate, we all know about that. This is what this space is all about. It really is about sharing those ideas, and that most certainly leads to creativity. And to reward it, to really reward that creativity, so that if the idea I come up with actually results in something different, a solution to a problem, then reward it, recognise it, make sure I'm celebrated for actually doing that. So the elephant in the room, though, is unfortunately, we, as humans, as all of us, have an unconscious bias against creativity. And the reason why is we're tired, we are overwhelmed, we get an abundance of information, and we would much rather take the road we already know how to get home. I already know how to do it this way. I know how to run that spreadsheet or that report. I don't want to look at it from a different perspective. But I encourage you to challenge that bias as well. And it normally is unconscious. I imagine if I asked most of you in here, you would say you'd love a bit more creativity in your workplace. Most leaders talk about that ad nauseum at times. I'm thinking, well, where is the evidence? So I encourage you to challenge that. And the first way you can challenge that is for you to be present with creativity. So the way you can do that is that you can think it, you can do it, and you can embed it. So if you do some of those things, we believe that you will build the creativity in your workplace, and that will therefore lead to a higher tolerance of ambiguity. If you can actually respond to uncertainty, new things and complex things with a higher tolerance, so you're responsive to it, you have a better chance of remaining relevant as we move forward. Thank you very much.